Everything happened with the girl opening the door and not even realizing that she's about to learn terrible news. The man warned her not to be frightened in advance and said that he didn't want to talk about it. But unfortunately, as much as he didn't want to, he would have to. He could imagine how hard it would be for her, but he had no right to keep silent. The fact is that her husband, Lord Alex, was honored for his great work in a conflict with a neighboring country. He tried to speak in hints, but because of this, the girl began to worry even more. She thought that the news was very bad, because judging by the face of this man, he had been tuning into this conversation for a long time and did not want to explain anything. Elvira admitted that although she had his child, she was not his wife. Some time ago, she had to find out that the man she loved supported the open state. She had talked him out of it, but the Lord had done it his way. She tearfully recalls that day, because as if she felt that he might not turn around, the guy was very persistent. This man was just not to be changed. He reassured her and said everything just so that her beloved would not be nervous and would be sure that not everything was as dangerous as it seemed, although she did not know whether to go home or not. It was a difficult conversation. They were both the same, that they might never see each other again. Alex was doing his best to pretend everything was okay, though he was just as scared. He said with a confident look that he was sure to come home in a few months, and at the same time he was ashamed that he himself had no certainty of that, and no one knew how things would really be. It turns out he was saying what he wanted next to his favorite girl, even if it's very different from reality. He knew where he was going, and all the same he had to be there, not hiding like some of his friends. A guy from childhood, himself a protector and an enemy. It's reliable indeed. Elvira listened to him, but still did not believe a single word. She has felt that something was wrong, and to the last would expressed it at home. She hoped that her beloved would change his mind and stay by her side. Girl, many times it happened. What would happen if she found out that something happened to him? Nothing worse could not even be imagined. At the same time, when she saw him in uniform, she began to fall in love with this man all over again, and to make herself believe that he was strong, that he would be able to defeat the outcome very quickly and easily, and literally in a couple of days return home. Though Elvira has no doubts about him, the images that were created in front of her eyes at night, the landscape of panic and fear of losing Alex forever, their relationship is very recent. They fell in love with each other at first sight, and literally in a month they are supposed to get married. But fate has prepared an unpleasant surprise for them. The girl could not accept it for a long time, and even wanted to come to him to make a surprise. But unfortunately, she did not have time. When he had to leave, she felt a strange sensation and tried to ignore it. Apparently, it was a signal that something was going to happen to him, and she shouldn't let her lover go so easily. She looked into his eyes and tried to remember this picture as long as possible. After the long embrace, she couldn't bear to realize that the next time might not be soon, very soon at all. Elvira could hardly hold back her tears and didn't know where to go. She felt as if she was losing half of herself, as if her world had been destroyed and now nothing made sense. She just waited for him and dreamed of the wedding. The girl often went to her friends and told them that she had a bad feeling, and they comforted her, even though they realized that there was nothing they could do. Meanwhile, 8 months had passed. Not a day had gone by that she hadn't cried at night and remembered Alex, the man she loved most in the world. Although a lot of time has passed, she cannot realize that Alex is no longer there. The girl is sure that it's not true, and sooner or later he will come home. It got to the point that she started looking for his notes to see, at least his handwriting. The girl constantly took his things with her and did everything possible to feel his presence. She had a feeling that no matter how hard she tried, it would not be possible to come to terms and start living a new life without him, without the person with whom she felt happiest in the world, most loved and desired. And that's not all. At some point, when the girl was cleaning the house, she accidentally found some note. As it turned out, it was one leaf from his personal diary, which she knew nothing about. It said that he himself felt that something bad was about to happen soon. Everyone who supported her in that moment couldn't even imagine how much it hurt. She reads those words and realizes it was all her fault. She had to stop him at all costs, even if it's not possible. Elvira realizes that she will never be able to forgive herself. She doesn't even know what she can do to distract herself and not think about it for an hour anyway. Time can't go back. But life goes on. It turns out that at the time she learned of her lover's death, the girl was pregnant. She was very lucky that he gave her a beautiful child. She really enjoys passing time with him, and sometimes thinks about how she doesn't even know what she would do without him. That way she's not too bored or lonely like she could be. After a few more days, there is a problem with money. It becomes less and less, respectively, then it will need to be taken somewhere. Elvira thought about a job and began to look for it in the nearest neighborhood. She agrees to anything to get some money for food and to feed the child. She began to refuse one by one. And because of this, there was a terrible fear. Now she is responsible, but only for herself, but also for a beautiful little girl. After she was refused by the fifth person, she did not go away and said that she could do anything, even for a reward, in the form of food. But the man refused and asked her to go to someone else. She felt very embarrassed and uncomfortable walking on this street. She approached literally everyone, and no one helped her. Instead, they started looking at her as if she had betrayed someone or done something wrong. Elvira began to panic, because it was unknown whether she would be able to feed herself and the baby tomorrow. As it turned out, that wasn't the hardest part. At one point, Catherine asked where her dad was, and it was the hardest question she could ask. It was just impossible to answer, especially when it was as unexpected as possible. The mother was very frightened because on the one hand, she does not want to deceive her daughter. But on the other hand, it is not known what will be the reaction of a small child who learns that the father is no longer there and she will never see him. There is a choice to tell the terrible truth or to deceive the child and do it for several more years. After the death of Lord Alex, the only son of the family, it turns out that his daughter becomes his heir. But unfortunately, it happened too soon. They did not even have time to see each other. The thing is, Alex's family doesn't know he had a favorite girl. If they knew she had a baby, they'd take her and raise an heiress. At this moment, the girl hugged her daughter and thought that even if she no longer had a father, she would replace two parents for this beautiful girl, be both mother and father to her. She promised to be the best mom she could be, to give her a happy childhood and not let anyone hurt her. The girl realized that since there was such a situation, she should do everything possible to make Alex proud of her. Because he had said more than once that Elvira would be a great mother, she wanted to prove it to him, to herself, and most importantly, to the child. Once a month, she always goes to the place where her loved one has remained forever. She goes there to be sad and say everything that she has in her heart. She has a feeling that he hears her, and after the conversation, she feels a little better. She tells him the words she used to say every time. He was and still is her greatest protector. If she had a little patience and confidence, she could have stopped him, and they probably would have waited until the baby was born together. But what is it? It's Alex. Is he alive and okay? I wonder what that means. Because if this was some kind of joke or something, Elvira is going to get revenge on everyone who made her cry at night all this time. Very interesting what happens. In that time, the girl had time to have a baby, come to terms with him and his underwear, and finally realized he was gone. But from the looks of it, the guy is alive and well. From the sounds of it, his co-workers are thanking him for a job well done, and they're all going home to report the victory. He was being hailed as a great duke, for whom there are no enemies. He did his job faster than he planned, except, much more interesting, why his girlfriend was told that he was gone and whether he knew about it. In the meantime, a few more days have passed. Everyone has managed to return, and on this occasion, in the center of the city, a lot of people have gathered. The relatives of the guys can't believe that they waited for them, and almost no one was hurt. At this moment, Elvira doesn't know that Alex is all right. She came to the party to be happy for the others, and doesn't even realize that her Alex is somewhere among these guys. It's very good that she didn't confess to her daughter and didn't tell the truth, or rather didn't have time. At this age, it would be very difficult for a girl to learn about it, to accept the death of her father, and to find out after a while that he's alive. So it's probably for the best that Elvira didn't say anything. They look at people and can't even dream of being in their shoes and feeling the same emotions. They all came to meet their sons, husbands, and fathers, and they think Alex is gone. Suddenly, the girl hears a familiar voice and thinks that she just imagined it. She had already resigned herself to the fact that it was impossible and did not even look in that direction. But at some point, the guy said her name again, came closer and asked her to turn around. Elvia happened to look in that direction and couldn't believe her eyes. She saw her favorite person and thought it was impossible. Alex smiled and said that now, nothing would separate them. The girl was so surprised that she was frozen in one place and did not know what to say. She even forgot that it was possible to hug, to be happy, and go home. Instead of dealing with the situation and rejoicing, Elvira got scared and ran home to her friend. She asked how she would behave in a situation where she saw a ghost or a person who looked very similar to someone who had died almost a year ago. It's so serious that she can't even think about him being alive. It's weird that the guy didn't start catching up to them and let them calm down. That situation was like a dream for her. It was impossible to imagine how much she had already resigned herself to his furniture, that she had not even thought of the fact that perhaps it was some mistake and the man was alive in the end, as happens very often. It must have been such a great loss to her that, having come to terms with it, it's harder for her to believe he's alive, even though it used to be hard to believe he was dead. The friend doesn't even know how to react to it. She is also sure that she just imagined it and it can't be like that. She even suggested that maybe subconsciously Elvira wanted to see him, and that's why she confused him with another person. They had a very long talk on the subject. I don't even realize that somewhere not far away, in this city, there is a live Alex waiting for them. I wonder how he feels after such a strange meeting. Most likely, the girl will not change her mind and will continue to think that she just imagined. Everything depends only on him. The sooner he can find them, the sooner they can talk about everything and plan further life together. In order not to be even more nervous, Elvira tries to focus on the baby and think less about what she can't get back. She herself does not notice how often his face, smiling, beloved, and most dear, appears in her thoughts. If the girl found out the truth, most likely the first thing she would do would be to go to the person who deceived her and gave her false information. She suffered so much because of it and would probably want to take revenge on him and tell him everything that she had accumulated during this time. Meanwhile, Alex has come to rest after a hard day's work, but for some reason, he's not alone in the house. He had hardly had time to clean himself up, to eat dinner, when some woman appeared in this room. From the way she talks to him, they've obviously known each other for a long time, but it's not clear what she's doing here. Turns out she found out that the guy left all his possessions to Elvira, and for some reason she doesn't like it, like she's entitled to it and wants some of it back. As suddenly, she came even closer to him and made him talk about everything that had happened between them. Alex was clearly not happy about this conversation and did not understand why he should waste his time on this. Now he would like to rest, not all of this. In parallel, he is cleaning his sword, not listening to this girl, and the only thing that bothers him now is Elvira, or rather, the little girl he saw her with in the center of the city this afternoon. He didn't even have time to catch up to her. All he saw was a frightened look and some kind of denial. He didn't know what it meant, but it was a denial that he was alive. The guy misses her incredibly much and wants to hear her soft voice, touch her soft hair, and cuddle with her all day long like he did before. He even felt guilty for a moment because he had never seen her in such a state before. It was as if she was afraid of him and didn't want to see him, when in fact he just doesn't know that she was deceived and suffered all this time, trying to come to terms with his loss. As suddenly, this girl told him everything. She understood why he was so pensive and confessed that she accidentally heard the conversation of passers-by about the fact that everyone knows that he is not alive for a long time. Accordingly, the girl could know about it first. The girl suggested that perhaps the Countess forbade Elvira to see Alex, and the girl was afraid to refuse. The guy replied that there was no such thing. He was sure that no one could forbid her to do so, and even if they tried, Elvira would never do such a thing. Meanwhile, judging from their conversation, you can tell that this girl is his colleague or just his assistant. She suddenly wondered who the little girl was that Elvira was holding by the hand was. The two of them remembered her very well and began to speculate about different options. They really want to believe that it is Alex's child. Besides, in such a short time, she could not have given birth to a child by someone else. The more they talk about it, the more he wants to know. He realizes that there's no point in assuming anything, so he just has to act. At the very last moment, to reassure himself and the assistant, he said that most likely his girlfriend was just working as a nanny and thus trying to make money. The aide asked how he could be sure of that. If he himself says that until he finds out the truth, there is no point in making up something and trying to justify someone for the sake of peace of mind. Alex starts to get angry, and because of that, he doesn't want to talk about it anymore. He starts to say that it's not a matter and he'll figure it out on his own. without her and without her options. The assistant didn't continue. She understands that in this situation, it's really better not to make him angry. He came back after a hard fight, and even here there were new problems. She stepped back a few meters and tried to change the subject. And also, for some reason, he calls her a dragon, further proving the fact that she's definitely not his girlfriend, but just an assistant or co-worker he's back with. It turns out he called her a dragon for a reason. Alex was just reminding her that because of that, she has the ability to see the truth. Consequently, the girl can tell who the little girl is. The aide replied that she could try to find out something, but that she wasn't promising anything. If it didn't work out, she asked that he not take offense and start thinking it was her fault. She's not strong enough to find out the truth about someone from a distance and do it as quickly as she'd like. Meanwhile, Elvira is putting her daughter to bed and still thinking about her husband's ghost. In fact, it had been much easier for her even yesterday, but now, after almost seeing him and remembering his appearance for a second, it had become simply unbearable. At some point, her friends came up to her. They again wanted to support her and ask her how she was feeling, because she told them that it was very hard for her without them. Elvira is very grateful to them, because if she had been at home alone with her child all this time, it would have been much more difficult and even unbearable. Because of all these intrusive thoughts, you can just go crazy. So, they approach her as often as possible and try to distract her from the gusto and loneliness. They even promised to be there for as long as needed, and agreed to all live together in the same house. When suddenly some woman came to visit them, she apologized for coming unannounced and asked to speak to Lady Elvira, if of course she didn't mind. She was allowed to enter the house, and as soon as Elvira heard about it, she went straight to her and asked her what was wrong. The woman replied that everything was fine and asked not to worry. She explained that she wanted to be supportive and make sure Elvina didn't feel alone. It turns out she's Alex's mom, and somehow she still managed to find the house of Elvira's friends. But what's more interesting is how she even knew her son had a girlfriend he loved. It turns out that she has long guessed about it, and not once followed them. Earlier, she wanted to prevent this relationship, but what she needs now, it is unclear. If the girl knew how Alex's mom treats her, she would not even talk to her. Since they have the same problem, now there is no reason to hate each other. At least that's what we can hope for. It remains to be seen what this woman is really up to. From then on, they began exchanging short greetings, and when they happened to see each other on the street, they tried to be supportive and ask if they needed any help. Elvia was constantly afraid that this woman was up to something and was only communicating with her for profit, as it was before. She realized that she couldn't be trusted, but at the same time, she had no one else to talk to about it. Even her friends wouldn't understand her like the woman whose son was Alex did. She tried not to tell her anything unnecessary, for any word of hers might play against her. Knowing this person, it was better to communicate with her as little as possible, only in extreme cases. Victoria tries to be polite, but the girl still notices that there is no sincerity in her words. It's as if she's trying to gain trust and find out something. Since I can't kick her out, I have to talk to her and pretend she's happy to see her. She realizes how hard it is to hear the news that her son has died and not have any support. She knows that she has no husband or friends to share this situation with. It so happens that she only knew Elvina, so she had to come to her. Since telling other people about it doesn't make sense, they have to talk and regret it with each other. The woman begins to tell everything she knows about it, and as it turned out, Alex was one of those who destroyed the most enemies. He fought to the last and even asked to pass a note with the words that he loves his mother and the girl. But unfortunately, this note was lost and no one knows whether it was an accident or not. It turns out his mom wanted to take home a few things he used often. But since Elvina also values those things, she doesn't even know if she can give anything away. As she talked, it felt as if Alex's mom was trying to consider everything around her and wasn't even listening to what she was saying to her. The girl realized from her first word that this person had not just come to support her and talk about Alex. She was obviously up to something. For a moment, the girl thought it would be a good idea to end this conversation and let her know that she didn't really want to talk to her. And besides, it wasn't her house. It was her friend's house, who had only politely allowed her in. But that's not the most interesting thing. Alex's mom starts to tell about the rumors that he was seen among the guys who came back alive. She asked what the girl thinks about it, but Elvina doesn't want to hear anything about it. She asked to leave her alone because Alex is not coming back. She doesn't understand how much time should pass for people around her to finally understand. It hurts her a lot to remember this man and to constantly realize the fact that she had a chance to save him. The woman tried several times to return to this topic, but her sister-in-law flatly refused. At one point, she completely lost the mood and appeared even more eager to go on vacation. Elvina found out about these rumors and concluded that people are just trying to both reassure and create false hope that he is alive after all. Finally, they took each other's hands and promised that if someone was worse off, they would meet again and try to support each other. The girl thought that the conversation was already over, but Alex's mom still wouldn't leave. She started meddling and asking who the girl's father was. Elvina couldn't hide the truth anymore and said that Alex's father, the woman didn't stop there. She offered to tell the child the truth, namely that her father had died. She explained that the child should know the truth and it was wrong of them to hide what had happened. The girl replied that she would think about it, but for now, she didn't plan to talk about such serious topics. At best, it could happen in a few years, but not now. This conversation has reached an impasse. The woman starts asking a lot of questions and doesn't realize that it's long past time for her to go home. It turns out that in this situation, she has only two options. The first is to tell it like it is and ask her to leave. And the second option is to wait until the woman wants to leave on her own. She's not even hiding from the fact that she won't leave until the owners of this house kick her out, but it's not clear what she wants. First, she wanted to support Elvina, and now she's convinced that she needs to tell the truth to her child. The girl does not know who to listen to and what to expect next. She is very confused, and to make up her mind, she needs at least to be alone, which is not possible. In the meantime, some more time passed. After a week, the girl was able to find a job where she could sometimes come with her child. It is very convenient because the girl does not have the opportunity to hire a nanny or leave the girl with someone else. Her new employer is a very kind person. The man enjoys talking to the child and is happy to have found such a responsible worker as Elvina. He sometimes comes and supervises the process, as the girl has not yet fully understood everything and has not had an internship, so he has to check if she is doing everything right. Surprisingly, she is so good at her job, she doesn't even have to be supervised. And that's because this job is very important to her. She can't make a mistake, otherwise she would just lose her job and the ability to feed her child. The girl loves to come to this place, and especially to communicate with the children of customers who come with their parents to this store. Since choosing books is not a quick process, she gets to meet new friends and have a good time while her mom works and earns money. Everything had worked out quite well. The main thing was to keep it that way. Of course, she still had thoughts of Alex, but unlike how she had felt before, things were much better now. Here, in a very calm and pleasant atmosphere, she is able to feel the harmony and tranquility she's been dreaming of for almost a year since she lost her loved one and was left alone. When there is free time, the man allows her to read some works because he realizes that, working in such a store, it is impossible not to be interested in literature and sit in one place. Since people don't come here very often, most of the time you have to find something to do. Mostly Elvina dusts the shelves and books, airs the room, does some light cleaning, and chooses the right music for the atmosphere in the room. When all this is done, it remains only to sit in one place and read something interesting. At first, it was very difficult to decide what she liked best, because before that, the girl had not read anything and did not know where to begin. Man gave her some advice and named her favorite authors, so it was much easier to choose her first book. And yet, as beautiful as everything is now, it is impossible to forget the past, and Elvina misses Alex very much and thinks that if it were possible to turn back time, things would not be the same. As suddenly, the man thought about it and decided that he could not keep silent any longer. He noticed from the very first day that the girl was constantly thinking about something and hiding that something was very upsetting her. He even offered to take a few days off so she could regain her strength and start fresh. Elvina continues to keep silent because she does not want to talk about her problems and believes that if someone else finds out about it, it will be even more difficult for her. She does not want to be pitied by everyone. On the contrary, she tries to eliminate even the thought of it, just to stop thinking about it. It's as if some force is preventing her from doing so and making her remember this man all the time, and maybe for good reason, because as it turns out, he's alive, and she just needs to make sure of it. All it takes is one more meeting and things could be completely different. so it's all about him. The guy has to find her, and next time, she won't think it's some ghost or imagination. Despite everything that seems to be very complicated, in fact, everything is simple. If the girl had stayed and not run away, Alex would have told the truth and now they would be together. It was partly her own fault for being frightened and refusing to believe that her lover was alive. At some point, they decided to go for a walk outside and get some fresh air. Nobody guessed anything, but at some point, Elvina sees a guy with blonde hair who looks a lot like the dead Alex. She looked in his direction, but thought it was another hallucination and should just pass by. No matter how hard she tried to get away and not think about it, it didn't work. It was like he was beckoning her to him and forcing her closer and closer. The girl froze and didn't know how to explain it to her daughter. Around that man, several other guys who looked like co-workers or assistants, it became just impossible to ignore this situation and through force walk onward. This time the girl did not run away. She just could not make a single step. Because this kind of sees not every day. She thought about how to approach and see his face. There was a risk that she would not be called, or they would enter the building before she could do it. At one point, they actively start arguing about something. It's like the others are trying to change the white-haired guy's mind or prove something. Looking at him from the back, Elvira can't believe her eyes. He looks so much like Alex that she doesn't even know how to react to it. Her daughter starts asking what's wrong, and her mom can't pay attention to her. The girl is confused and doesn't understand anything, so she can't explain anything to the child. After that, they decided to continue walking. Because they could stay here until evening and nothing would change, Elvira began to comfort herself with the fact that there were a lot of similar people in this world, and it was not surprising that after Alex's death, she often saw someone similar to her. Suddenly, some miracle happens. A guy happens to notice a girl and calls her name without a second thought, as if calling her to him or trying to draw attention to himself. At first, she pretended not to hear anything, for she thought she might be suspected of something, and asked why she had been looking at them so long. He wondered if there were such coincidences, for he hadn't expected to see her now, especially since he'd been thinking for a long time that he'd have to find her sometime and find out everything. Alex realized it a second ago that it was her, by the look, the gender of her voice, and her peculiar facial features. The guy comes closer and confesses that he is sorry that he didn't send any letters and didn't try to come here for a few days. But that's not what the girl expects to hear. He's a complete stranger to her now, whom she confused with Alex, not even realizing that it's him. At the same time, and he doesn't know that she's been crying all this time and trying to come to terms with his demise, which as it turns out wasn't. If they do get to talk, it will be a very interesting and unusual conversation. There will be a lot of questions. For some reason, instead of figuring things out and being happy, she starts saying she has a lot of things to do and needs to go somewhere, all very strange and unexpected. Will she be sure that this is not the Alex she knew until the last? The guy does not understand what is happening, because when he went home, he expected to receive a lot of nice words, joy, and hugs, but instead, Elvina begins to fear and avoid him. The daughter has noticed that as soon as they see this person, Mom immediately starts going somewhere else, as if she doesn't want to talk to him or see him. Alex is completely confused and does not even know what is better, to ignore the situation or to catch up and try to solve everything. He has suspicions that during all this time, while he was not here, she has already found a new guy. And now, she does not need him. And if each of them knew the truth, the problem couldn't last a single day. Everything would be so much easier. All he can do is stay where he is and try to stop her with words. Suddenly, he says a phrase that could only be said by the real Alex. He reminded her of the day when they said goodbye and proved that it was him. Without even realizing it, the girl immediately stopped, even though she thinks that it is impossible. Realizing that she's only reacting to some memories from their happy past, Alex starts to take advantage of it, because the only way to stop her is to stop her. At one point, the girl stopped, and it's very much like he got it right. But unfortunately, she looked at him and said that unfortunately, she really needed to go home. Really. She didn't listen to a single word and only stopped because she was repeating what she had already said. Little girl, what did you feel? And began to look very closely at this man. She liked him at once, but just because he was being avoided by her mother, she also began to be wary of him and to behave like her. The guy realized that they didn't want to listen to him, and even more convinced of his assumption, he had the idea to let this man go. After all, if Elvina didn't want to see him, why should he force her to do something that would only cause misunderstandings? Lastly, to finally let go and forget everything that had happened between them, he only wanted to ask one question that concerned this child, and more specifically, who his father was. He realizes that he might make her even more angry, but at the same time, he really has the right to know about it. In response, the girl says that it's none of his business and it doesn't concern him in any way. To reassure himself, Alex asked the next question because maybe she is just someone's nanny and doesn't like to talk about it. Elvina doesn't want to see him, but unlike the first time, this time she doesn't leave and listens to this man as if she wants to stay. But at the same time, she doesn't believe that this is who he looks like. Suddenly, the girl starts complimenting him and admiring the way Alex looks. It means only that she likes him very much. Does the girl feel something? Because not for nothing, he charmed her from the first seconds of acquaintance. Her mom gets nervous. She wants to leave immediately and not waste her time with these idle conversations. The girl did not listen to her mom and approached Alex. She was interested to talk to him and see him closer, of course. The guy was only happy and said that he would love to meet such a nice and beautiful girl. He asked why her mom was so sad. The girl replied that maybe she had a lot of problems or a bad mood. She was never interested in such things, so has no idea what to answer to that. After that, they discussed today's weather, their favorite colors, animals, and many other things that they usually talk about with kids. And after that, she called her mom and thus answered Alex's question. As soon as he heard this word, he realized that the girl was hiding something and didn't want to tell him. But just because she was silent, he might misunderstand everything and think badly of her. Without thinking for a second, Alex approaches Elvina and asks if there is anything she wants to tell him, because there are a lot of questions and almost no answers. The guy sincerely does not understand why he deserves such an attitude, because when they said goodbye and talked for the last time, they were each other and hated loneliness, or rather, to be alone, without a loved one. And now, he sees her as a completely different person, and can't believe that in a few years, the beautiful and sweet girl he loved could find a new boyfriend and even have a baby with him. At the very last moment, when there was really little time left, they decided to find a compromise. Elvina said that she would first take her daughter home, and after that, she would try to explain everything, except that he had to explain everything: why he was alive, why she had been deceived, and why someone needed it. In order to prevent her from running away and never coming back, he suggested another option, namely to walk her all the way home so that he would know where she lived and would be guaranteed that they would talk after the child got home. At that moment, his assistants suddenly came up. They asked him if he was going back to the castle, because there were still a lot of things to do, which should not be postponed. Otherwise, it will be worse, and everyone will regret about it. They feel it's already a bit stressful to get a little bit of work done, release early, and go about their personal business or problems with a clear conscience. Alex explained that he didn't have any time at all right now. They replied that they absolutely didn't care about their personal problems. If the mister found out they weren't working, it would be very bad. Elvina talks and realizes that actually, the guy could be in serious trouble, and he still wants to talk to her, meaning that she's far more important to him than anything else. It is very interesting what Alex will decide. Almost everything depends on it. If he chooses to work, he risks never seeing or talking to Elvina again. And if he chooses her, he may never return to work again and lose his position, status, and reputation. The guy said that if even once again someone tries to distract him from talking to his favorite girl, he will personally make sure that this person will regret and never do it again. He made it clear that family is always in first place for him, and work can wait, because he has assistants and deputies who are obliged to help in such situations. The guys replied that they understood everything and apologized for meddling. They were very embarrassed and unpleasant that the commander raised his voice at them, but at the same time, everyone understands that he has the right to do so. At some point, Alex became very ashamed and, at the same time, tired of dragging the situation out and wasting his and her time pointlessly. So he went up to them and told them that he would try to fix the situation and make them not be angry and stop being offended, and then he still offered to walk them home as promised. In fact, he really wants to hug her and kiss her and say all the things he hasn't said in years. Before, they used to declare their love to each other all day long and say they couldn't live without each other. But now, he doesn't know what's stopping him from doing it. In the meantime, it was evening, all the people had gone home, there was hardly anyone left on the street, and Elvina's friend was waiting impatiently for her to discuss everything that had happened during the day. She has no idea who her friend is about to come back with. Very interesting how she'll react to that, and whether she'll think exactly the same thing, that it's another person. She was sitting at her desk and heard that someone was approaching the house. She went to the door and could not believe her eyes, because she expected to see 2 people, but saw 3. The girl wanted to ask why it was so late, because they had agreed that the girl would come back early and they would make some dessert for tea. But now she has already forgotten about this dessert and doesn't even know what to say or how to react. She saw the Lord in front of her and was at a loss for words. And after that came the daughter of a friend, who was surprised as much as the others. She always dreamed of seeing this guy, and for some reason, immediately did not even understand what it is. She looked at him for a few minutes and only after that realized that this is the same Lord Alex. It turns out that everyone recognized him except his beloved. Either she does it on purpose, or she is so resigned to his death that she does not want to hear anything about it. It turns out that the girl sees an exact copy of the man in front of her and is still convinced that it is not him, not that Alex, without whom she could not imagine her life before. They greeted him and asked if the guy wanted to come in for tea. It's strange that Elvina hears all this and doesn't even react in any way. But that's not the best part, because Alex remembers the names of the 2 friends. He addressed them by name and thus again proved that it was him, because if it was just a stranger, he would never have known this information. Even they were surprised. Maria and Sophia had never seen him and didn't think that this man had such a good memory. The thing is that before, Elvina often told Alex how they spent their time, and after many years, he still remembered each of them. Even though they had never seen each other live before, they were so pleased that the 2 of them forgot to say that they were very pleased to see him. The fellow said he would not linger, for he found out they had plans. The only thing he wanted was to get his questions answered and leave without a scandal, as he usually does. And of course, he's very interested in talking to the little girl and hints little by little that he's her father. If the girl knew that, she would definitely never let him go and would offer to live all together as a family. In fact, it could have all been back on the very first day of his return to the kingdom, but because of some man who deceived her mom, things have been delayed for an unknown amount of time. When a girl sees that her child is more and more interested in this man, it becomes more difficult for her, because sooner or later, the guy can tell her everything without asking or warning her, and she does not need this. Perhaps that is why the girl avoids meeting with him, especially when there is a child nearby, who at any moment can ask an uncomfortable question, which must be answered honestly, because no one has the right to hide the truth from her, at least until the girl herself asks about it. In the end, as Alex thought he didn't manage to talk to Elvina, she deceived him again and said that she was very tired, when in fact, she had a very easy day today and did nothing of the sort. The guy realizes that, but still, he doesn't plan to force her. She has to want to talk, but when that will happen, no one knows, not even her. He had to go back to his assistant and inform him that it didn't work out. He really hoped that no one would blame him for anything and remind him that they could have been doing work at that time. He was just about to leave when suddenly, the door opened and Elvina came out. She apologized and asked him for a few more minutes. The girl explained that she was just afraid of this conversation and tried to postpone it for a while, but now, she didn't want to be silent. Even though she doesn't believe he's the same Alex, she wants to talk or hear the man so she can at least remember a little of what her favorite person looked like. But for some reason, instead of talking about personal topics, she starts asking why he doesn't let his aides go, and assumed that such a strong lord might be afraid to go out in the evening by himself. It was not very nice from her side, but still the guy didn't even pay attention to it. He started to smile, as if he had achieved something impossible. In this case, her attention, since she had asked about it. The guy told her that they were neither helpers nor guards. They were real imperial spies. At some point, it's as if they started to forget all the words and just look at each other. Somewhere in the back of her mind, the girl feels that it's a relative, but still she's afraid to even think about it. She had been through so much that just to know that this person was alive would be unbearable, and even worse and more difficult than the news of death. If it was possible to come to terms with that, then the fact that this dead person was now right in front of her seemed something fantastic and impossible. Elvina wanted to say many things to this man, but when she looks into his eyes, she realizes that no words are needed now. She just wants to stay near him longer, and she doesn't understand how this is possible. Her mind says it's a stranger, and her loved one is long dead, but her heart tells her otherwise, that he's much closer now than she thinks he is. When he first asked about her daughter, she had refused to hear about it at first. But at some point, she thought that since he was a stranger anyway, why not come clean? Just as she was about to say who her father was, she immediately changed her mind and could only say that she was really her daughter. That's not really what Alex wanted to hear. He already knows she's her mom. He wants to know who her dad is much more. If you look at the situation from his side, it turns out that he loved this girl, did not see her for several years, and when he arrives, he finds out that a child was born. It remains to understand who the father is, him, or there is someone else with whom Elvina could meet and create a relationship during this time. In the end, the guy just smiled and said that since she was tired, he didn't dare to keep her any longer. Very curious what else he had to do for the girl to realize that her lover was alive and was already beginning to suspect her of betrayal. He started to think a lot and study information at night. Alex started a personal diary because there is no one with whom he can share his experiences as she does with her friends. He has no such friends yet. Alex seriously thought about what to do. On the one hand, he should in any case respect her choice, and even if she has someone else, it is worth just to leave her alone. But on the other hand, she is not a stranger to him. And the question to answer, who is the father of the child, she should not ignore it. After that, his opinion changed dramatically. He thought that if he loves this person, he should fight to the end. Even if she has someone else, he wants to be there for her and rebuild the family. Only then that she hasn't yet told him words like, "I don't want to see you," or fallen out of love. He has a reason to fight and pursue everything that has been missing since he left to protect his homeland. It may seem that the most interesting thing has already passed, as suddenly, the girl suddenly turned around and began to go home, and at the same time, informed, without even looking him in the eyes, that the two of them are the parents of this child. At first, Alex thought that he was imagining it, but it seems that she said exactly that, which means that the girl has already realized that this is the same person. But it's strange that, after such a realization, she still leaves him, and does not behave exactly as it was before. Then they did not even leave each other. They did everything together, and literally every minute they said how happy they were together. They enjoyed every moment and dreamed of a happy future, and also were sure that no one and nothing could separate them. He wonders where all these emotions and feelings went anyway. Now he wants to think not about that, but about how to deal with this information. Now he knows that he is a father, and sooner or later, he will have to tell this to the girl. Finally, he found out what he could not find out all this time. And now, there is another problem. He does not understand why the girl is so indifferent to him. If she has already realized that he is alive, why she does not ask questions and does not try to understand what happened. It turns out the guy doesn't even realize that she was informed of his death years ago. If only he knew that, things could have been a lot easier. Plus, if they are the child's parents, they just need to talk about how they're going to move on, where they're going to live, and if they're even going to be a real family at all. It would seem, where it could be worse, as soon as Alex came to ask her opinion about it, the girl did not even listen to anything, and asked that in return for this information, he did not come back to her and did not bother her. Elvina does not want to forbid him to see the child, but asked to do it in such a way that she was not involved in it and was not at home at that moment. Of course, like any other person, he wants to know what she thinks and what she wants to say. The guy did not hold back and asked to explain everything, and also warned that until he knew the truth will not go anywhere, as she had no choice. The girl admitted that she is already so resigned to his death that she will never be able to love him again and forget those hard times when she missed him and tried to start living again. She thinks that if this situation goes on one more time, she just can't stand it. So she has only one suggestion, to try to forget each other and start living separately. Supposedly, it will be better for everyone. The guy does not understand why everything is so complicated, because you can just start living together and enjoy life as before, because love and feelings have not disappeared. The only problem is that someone does not want to lose a loved one again and feel everything anew. The situation is so complicated that she can't seem to change her mind. She's so afraid to go back in time and experience the same thing that she can't even be happy about the return of the guy she loved most in this world. Alex asked if she understood what it meant, because if they decided to forget each other together, it would be forever. Someone would find a mate and it would be too late to try to get everything back. Besides, it wouldn't hurt to think about a child. A girl, like any other child, needs a full family. Unfortunately, a guy can't read her mind and make her do something, especially if it's about sincere feelings and love. A girl should understand and realize all the consequences. Now she's giving up the family she's always dreamed of having. No matter how much he tries to change her mind and stop her, Elvina just doesn't listen to him. She has decided that this is the right thing to do and doesn't even try to look at the situation from the other side. She is so much afraid of making a mistake that she doesn't realize that she is making a mistake right now. It turns out that only a miracle can save this relationship. Although in fact, even the fact that she won't run away from him and will try to listen to him can be considered a miracle. She already treats him as a stranger and says that nothing can be returned. Although in fact, she really wants it. Unfortunately, fear overcomes love, which nothing could destroy just a few years ago. In that case, if he doesn't think of anything and doesn't try to do anything, this relationship will be ruined forever. It all depends only on how much he loves her and whether he is ready to try for the sake of joint happiness and saving the family. In the meantime, the next day came. It was a hard evening, so everyone didn't wake up as early as usual. Only one friend managed to get some sleep. Elvina is sleeping with her daughter in her room and doesn't even realize that in just a second, someone will interfere with her enjoyment of this moment and wake her up earlier than she would like. A friend enters the room without warning and wondered if they were still asleep. It was strange, for she had even passed the room quietly before. But now she didn't even think about the fact that she shouldn't have woken her friend up after a hard day like yesterday. The girl wakes up and doesn't understand anything. She feels bad about saying that it's not very proper of her friend. But since she's waiting in her house, she had to keep silent. And that wasn't all. It turns out her friend wouldn't have come into her room so early if it wasn't for something she saw outside her house a few minutes ago. She hinted that someone was very anxious to see Elvina. Of course, the friend already knows who this person is. There's no point in even guessing. But for some reason, the girl can't figure out who it could be in any way. For some reason, instead of holding the meeting and award presentation in a special area, they decided to do it right outside the house of Elvina's friend. The girl went outside and started hearing some unfamiliar words. She didn't understand anything, and yet, it was interesting to see everything. The girl and her friends had never been to an award ceremony before and didn't know what it was like, so it was very exciting for them. At first, no one even looked in her direction. The girl felt superfluous, but when she realized that she was not superfluous, it became a little easier and more comfortable. After that, she suddenly started to be given some jewelry, as if she deserves diplomas and medals and recently came with a victory. The situation was very confusing, and Alex was standing among all these people. He wouldn't take his eyes off her and kept wanting to get closer to her. The girl thought that he wanted to give her all this jewelry and decided to refuse. She said that she didn't need anything, and next time that nothing like that would happen, otherwise she would forget him forever. The guy and his assistant were beginning to doubt that they were even moving in the right direction and that they should try to get Elvina to reciprocate even a little bit. It seemed impossible. The situation is so unsolvable that the helpers have also joined the case. They are very curious whether it is possible at all and how long it will take the whole team to accomplish this difficult mission. They all began to see this case as some kind of competition for time and decided that the faster they help the commander, the faster they prove that there are no impossible tasks for them, despite the fact that all this time they were trained a little differently. Saving the Miracle family is no less important than defeating the enemy. They began to think of different plans and even thought about taking a little day off. But Alex immediately rejected the idea because he does not like to burden someone with his problems. He does not believe that anyone is interested in helping him and thinks that in this way the assistants want to get rid of work to do something more interesting. Although he sees nothing interesting and exciting in this. This is not a joke, but real life, in which any mistake can be the last and incorrigible. Besides, he feels better and knows better how to act. He has known Elvina for a long time. Accordingly, he has learned her character and manners of behavior in any situation better than any one of them. In his opinion, the main thing is to choose the right time and not to hurry. Meanwhile, The girl had already returned to the house and decided to have a quiet breakfast. She focused on herself, even asked her friends to have breakfast in some other room. She made them a meal in exchange for peace of mind and half an hour of privacy, but they still couldn't help themselves and went back to her place to find out everything. During the conversation, it turned out that Elvina did not want to listen to him so much that she did not notice the essence of all that she saw. It turns out that the man who spoke his speech said that she could become Alex's wife, but for what and why? Suddenly, unfortunately, the friends did not remember. They believed that she must do it because his wife dreams of becoming any girl. In their opinion, if someone is offered such a thing, there is no need to even think. You need to immediately agree and be happy with such a gift of fate. Besides, the girl herself has always dreamed of it, at least until she lost it for a few years. She refuses to even talk about it. But according to her friends, Elvina should do it, at least for the sake of her daughter. As suddenly, a little lady came up to them and asked what it was this morning outside their house. The mom got embarrassed, and her friend looked at her as if she was forcing her to do the right thing and tell the kid the truth. Very interesting what she will do in this situation, although most likely, as usual, will try to run away or distract the child, and all just somewhere so that she does not admit to herself that she wants it very much, but is afraid, and because of fear, refuses a happy future. It would be one thing if she was afraid of this man and knew he wasn't the man she wanted to live the rest of her life with, but he's the perfect guy, and the only thing that keeps her from getting back together is the fear of losing him again and feeling the same emotions. I wonder why she would even think that would happen. They can just agree with Alex that if he is offered to defend the kingdom, he should refuse for the sake of his family. This time, she avoided the conversation again and said they would talk about it a little later. The girl hugged her daughter and abruptly changed the subject. Elvina suggested going for a walk in the garden or to some new park where they had not been yet. As the girl loves ice cream, they even agreed to make it at home themselves. The child immediately rejoiced because the mother has recently become very little free time. Respectively, they rarely play or just rest together, as it was before. The main thing is that the girl should not regret that at some point she allowed herself to hide the truth from her own daughter, who has the right to know everything about her father. Literally an hour later, they suddenly found themselves near some hospital. The girl did not explain anything to her daughter, took some jam with her, and decided to talk to a familiar doctor. Since she rarely comes here, she made a few mistakes along the way and went the wrong way. And yet she was able to remember and find this place faster than she thought she would. The doctor is sitting quietly and resting, as suddenly someone knocked on the door. He was not expecting anyone, so he was a little surprised, because today he has no patience. Since the guy wasn't used to refusing help and thought that maybe someone had an emergency, he decided to open the door and see who was there after all. He recognizes Elvina and asks what she's doing here. But as usual, the girl wouldn't tell everything at once. The doctor at first thought that she had something going on, but since the girl wouldn't say anything, he just decided to wait for her to explain what she had come for. It turns out that it's not really a hospital, it's half his home. As the guy loves his job very much and has devoted his whole life to it, it turned out that his home became a place where anyone can come and get help. Elvina doesn't remember the last time she was here, but she does remember that it wasn't as beautiful and cozy as it is now. It's very pleasant to be here and you don't even want to leave. The atmosphere is incredibly disposing. You want to come here just to have a good time and talk to this person even without an occasion. It turns out this man is so attentive and professional in his work that he even remembered her favorite kind of tea. It was incredibly nice and surprising. Here she feels like she has a best friend to whom she can tell any problem and it solves itself. I really wonder what she came for and why she doesn't tell you about it right away. The doctor, though, makes it sound like he's just having a nice time with her. But really, since she's here, she obviously needs some help, and she's going to tell you about it very soon. Elvina started with compliments about what a great specialist he is, and there is no one better than him, and yet she just slowly starts to get to the point of the conversation and doesn't notice how this way she shows her excitement and fear of telling the truth. Plus, with my daughter around, it's doubly hard for her to admit what's really bothering her, and luckily, the doctor understands that. He tries not to give up any leading questions at all that will make her nervous or even walk back out, because that way she's sure to never come back and get help again. His reputation is very important for him, because if someone finds out that in communication with him, it is very difficult to admit about his problem, few people will want to come to such a specialist. And also, he does not want to scare the little girl because it depends on it and how she will treat doctors in the future. If she is afraid of him as a child, you can consider that he made a huge mistake. Children are usually already very afraid of going to the hospital, and if there are more cases like this, it's not good. There can be two problems in this. Children will be afraid, less likely to go to doctors, and consequently, it will be very easy for specialists to gain the trust of the patient and do their work quickly and efficiently. So, the doctor does everything right. He just waits for the right moment and makes his patients as comfortable as possible. He created a pleasant atmosphere and does not oblige to anything. It even happened that when someone was afraid or shy to say something, he offered to meet after some time and let people go home. Then they came much more confident, and everything was much easier. The guy offered her these two options and told her they could sit there until she was comfortable. That's what his professionalism is all about. Even those who go home still come back to this office and never think about going to someone else again. Elvina admitted that she was really having a hard time. Although on the way here, she was confident that she could share her problem. After that, they started talking about other different topics again, because it is already clear that they will not work today and will not solve the problem. In fact, she was a little ashamed, for instead of getting down to business, she had wasted his time, in which he could have been resting or sorting out his papers, such work as he always had enough to do. Meanwhile, the next day had come. The girl had been thinking all night whether she should go to the hospital today, but decided it was better to stay home and do some chores. She hadn't helped her friend in a long time and wanted to clean up. They were used to doing everything on their own and had never once told their daughter or Elvina to do anything. Elvina decided that first they should tidy up, have breakfast, and then think about something else. She saw that it wouldn't hurt to dust, wash her clothes, and maybe cook something for lunch or dinner. Her friends would be very pleased, and she would be distracted and stop thinking about problems. In addition, my daughter is also tired of doing nothing. Because of this, she is always asking to go outside, because there you can at least walk and find some new places. But today, everything would be different. The girls said that they were busy today and they had no time for a walk. The girl was immediately upset, and her friends did not understand what Elvina meant, because they did not ask her for anything. The girl cried and said that it was not interesting. She wanted to play like other children. Besides, she was here all alone, without friends or at least acquaintances of her age. Mom replied that she understood perfectly well, but unfortunately it just so happened that today was the day they would have to work hard and be without entertainment. The same was said to the second child. The girls made the final decision to have a clean day. Today will be a cleaning day, both inside and outside the house, throughout the grounds and garden. They just don't have any other choice. It's the only option to distract themselves and do something useful. Plus, it's more fun together. The kids were a little upset at first, but at one point even agreed and asked what they could do to help. Their moms immediately rejoiced, because there is nothing better than to see the smile of children, especially if it is associated with a useful work or cleaning. As soon as Elvina decided to go outside to see the amount of work, she first heard some noise, but didn't realize that she was in for a not-so-pleasant surprise. Turns out it's the sound of rain. It feels like it's only going to get heavier, and there's no way I'm going to be able to clean up the property today. As it turned out, Elvina offered to think of something else. She didn't really want to get wet in the rain, especially such a hard and cold one. It so happened that they accidentally went so far that they would have to hide somewhere. The girl began to look for a suitable place, and as quickly as possible so that the child did not have time to get sick. She had enough problems without this. She turned right and saw some place to stand and wait out the downpour. It remained to be seen if they could be there and if some guard would kick them out. The girl asks her mother to hold her in her arms, as the rain makes a loud noise, and because of this she becomes very scared and uncomfortable. As suddenly, Elvina remembers this place and realizes that no one has been here for a long time for a few months. So there is nothing wrong if they stay there for a while. Is a small house that is perfect for hiding from the rain and not getting sick. It is certainly very uncomfortable and a bit gloomy, but there is no other option anymore. She began to calm her daughter because she realizes how stressful it is for her to be in an unfamiliar house where she can come at any time, for example, like them, to just hide out. It is very cold in this house, and they had to look for some things to keep warm. Elvina went to see what was on the shelves and found some kind of blanket. At first, she didn't really want to take it, but then the girl realized, Right now, it was much more important for her to make sure her daughter didn't get sick. Even though it was someone else's stuff, she'd have to take something. It's much better and more peaceful. They're going to return that plaid anyway, and they're not going to take it away. Now we can only hope that the downpour will pass as soon as possible and will not be able to return home. After such adventures, it is unlikely to want to clean and put in order, which means that most likely, all business is postponed to tomorrow. The girl suggested looking out the window, because that would tell them how long they would have to stay here and when they could go home. Except that as soon as they looked out the window and saw that the weather was only getting worse, the mood immediately disappeared. They were sick of sitting in this cold house. There is a constant feeling as if someone is about to come in here, get indignant and kick them out. Any sound and rustle and very much alarmed, and for over an hour it has been constantly scary. Even though the girl herself is very much afraid of it, she tries to show her daughter that there is nothing wrong with it, just so that she calms down and doesn't think about it anyway. They are very lucky that they didn't stay on the street and didn't get sick. And even if a person came in here, they could explain the situation and everything would be fine. Just as Elvina thought of that, the front door opened. And just seconds later, some guy walks in. Mom and daughter saw a huge thunderstorm and got doubly scared. The girl screamed very loudly and asked her mom to get out of here. She hid and started crying as if some maniac had walked in on them. This guy? And thought that there was someone here because he also came here to hide. And so far, even before he could see who screamed so much, he apologized and said that he would leave soon. He just opens his eyes and realizes that fate has brought them together again. First of all, it's Alex, and secondly, he saw Elvina in front of him. The chance that they could meet here was just minimal, but it happened. The girl can't believe her eyes. She expected to see some evil man, and she saw him. Even the little girl calmed down. She remembered Lord Alex and stopped crying. When everyone had calmed down, he allowed himself to come closer and joked that some forces were trying to get them to talk after all, now that no one would be able to run away or do anything to stop them. Elvina immediately offered to get some plaid for him because she already knows that there are enough for everyone, even if someone else comes. Alex turned up and said that he was hardly soaked. He had come here to avoid ruining his clothes. At that, he had no time at all. This downpour was completely out of time, and yet he was very pleased to feel her care again and to hear that beautiful voice. Elvina saw a few drops after all and insisted that he take that plaid and dry his clothes after all. At first, they didn't even know what to talk about or how to behave, so they just stood there looking at each other. When the situation became too awkward, Elvina spoke up. She suggested looking out the window or opening the door to get some air in. She felt so stuffy she even wanted to go outside. Alex said that the rain would not stop soon, so they would have to sit here for at least a few more hours, and that was in the best case. Everyone was already regretting having gone outside and not paying attention to the sky, which suggested that something was about to begin. At some point, the girl also looked out the window and was scared again. She is very scared, and the noise that cannot be removed. Alex saw this and purposely closed the visibility in that direction so that his daughter, which he had already learned about, calmed down and was not afraid of anything. The girl's mom saw this and was very surprised. She didn't expect her to even pay attention to it because she thought Alex wasn't ready for this. He never had any experience or idea about parenting, especially about what a father should do. He did the right thing and was even surprised that it happened on its own, not on purpose, just automatically. But for some reason, instead of just staying near her mom and falling asleep, the girl got up and forbade him to look in her direction, as if he had done something wrong. The guy asked what was wrong, because he thought that something offended her or did not like her. The girl did not answer anything, ignored him, and still continued to forbid to look in the direction of her mother. Even the girl didn't realize it. Elvina asked her to stop. It's wrong and disrespectful to the person who wanted to make the best of it. She asked her to sit next to her and not to do it again. The mother was very embarrassed and even had to apologize for her daughter's behavior. Alex just politely pretended that nothing had happened. Besides, since he was the girl's father, he didn't want to ruin his relationship with her. It turns out that now it's better for them to just keep quiet and not say anything, so there won't be any conflicts and misunderstandings. At this point, the guy looks at them and doesn't understand why he deserved such an attitude, because all he did was go off to defend his kingdom. and when he came back, he was ignored and rejected by each of them. He no longer knows what to say to bring back all the beautiful things that are missing in their relationship. He feels like a stranger and wishes he could bring everything back to the way it was. When they were together, loving each other, they needed nothing else. The only thing that could make them happy was themselves. Very interesting what will come out of this, because so far, no positive prognosis is not seen at all. Everything is getting worse and worse, despite the fact that the guy is trying very hard. By this, he only complicates the situation and distances himself from the family. Because of the whole situation, everyone felt so awkward that they didn't even notice that the weather had long since improved, and the sun had even appeared. The adults didn't even look toward the window, but the girl ran up and started to rejoice as if she had received some long-awaited gift, as if she had been dreaming of going outside for more than a year, and now, finally, she had such an opportunity. She began to persuade her mother to go out for a walk, because now there would be no rain for sure. All the clouds had passed. The weather outside was perfect, which made for a pleasant walk. The guy realized that they were either going to leave now, or he could make it work to either walk together or talk some more. He hated to make another mistake so much that he was scared to say even one word. Besides, it is not known how the child reacts to it. That time, he did not even realize what he did wrong, and now he is doubly afraid that such a situation will happen again. Even the girl realized that, first of all, she needs to get angry and avoid not Alex, but to calm down her daughter. She probably got so scared that she starts to get angry without reason, at everything and everyone she sees, is actually quite normal. But in this situation, it made it very difficult and ruined the atmosphere everyone was trying to maintain. Finally, as they were about to leave, Alex asked how much free time they had, and if they had any at all, probably wanting to suggest a walk together, or like that time, a walk to the house. The girl replied that they had a lot of things to do that needed to be done before tonight, and it was all because of the rain that had stopped everything for half a day. I'm surprised he hasn't gotten tired of trying for this relationship, because the girl is avoiding him and apparently she hasn't been interested in it for a long time. The girl answered that she was not in the mood, and after that, pleased him and said that she did not treat him as badly as he thought. She just needed time to get used to it, and sooner or later, she would want to talk about everything. The main thing was that no one rushed her and did not force her to do it. She's going through a very difficult time and even had some problems with her job, so it's not the best time to get into a relationship. She promised to do it, but not now. She thought the guy would say something back, but this time, he just remained silent and wished her a good day. Elvina was used to the other and thought that now he would catch up with her as usual, but not this time. She is looking at him, waiting for some words, but nothing happens. Alex decided to change tactics, and since she is avoiding him and does not want to talk about the relationship, he will just wait for her to try and do something. He is really tired of trying and not seeing any changes. He wants to wait for a while, observe, and if there is no initiative from her side, he will forget her just like she did. The next day came. This time everyone had a good night's sleep and rest. Some even woke up earlier than usual. The weather was beautiful this morning, so the girl wanted to go outside and walk around a bit. But when she went out, she could not even imagine who she would meet and what could happen. The child was playing with some toys, and at some point she realized that someone was standing next to her, right in front of her. She saw the shadow of some person and literally immediately regretted that she had gone for a walk without her mother. After that, she saw the shoes and realized that there was a grown man in front of her. Definitely not a child or a woman. The girl was not shy and immediately asked him who he was and what he was doing here, and after that, why he approached her and not some adult person. She sees him for the first time and doesn't understand what to do. This man has an unusual appearance and seems clearly not lost. Judging by his confident look, he has become where he is going. The only thing the girl could think of was to say her name and ask what his name was. She didn't want to keep quiet and have this stranger think she was scared of him. The guy didn't give his name, but instead decided to teach her something. He said she shouldn't say her name so easily to strangers, because it could be that he was a villain or a kidnapper of some sort. Instead of being scared, the girl said that she wanted to ask her mom if she could play with him. The guy didn't expect that. He realized that this girl was very brave and nothing would scare her. He felt sorry for her mother, because while the girl does not see, her daughter breaks all the rules, she trusts a stranger, and at the same time easily tells him her name, and he did not even ask about it. She did it herself. The girl returned to the house where her mother had already baked something, probably a very tasty pie, which she wanted to feed her daughter after the walk. Elvina suspects nothing, but now she finds out that the girl already wants to play with some stranger. The girl asked what was wrong, and the daughter did not hide anything and said that she was interested in some stranger. She really wanted to play with him and asked to be allowed to be friends with him. Elvina doesn't understand what's going on, because all she sees from the window is an adult who is hardly looking for friends of her daughter's age. Literally in a second, this man turns into a cat. The girl thought that she was imagined, and of course, allowed to play with it, but asked only one thing: after the walk must be sure to wash your hands thoroughly. The thing is, the guy doesn't usually use magic, but since it's very important and necessary for him to talk to this girl today, he had to pretend to be a kitten so that Elvina wouldn't interrupt them. Meanwhile, the girl came back and said that everything was all right. Her mother had let her play with him and she was very happy about it. She had been looking for a new friend for a long time, and he had come to her by himself. After that, she was curious to know his name, for she had told him her name and he hadn't yet. The guy laughed as if he didn't want to say it. To find out even more information, she needed to find out where he lived and why he was here. Of all the questions he was able to answer, his name, it turns out that this wizard's name is Johnny. He even made it so that the girl didn't want to know the rest of the information anymore, and didn't even notice how it happened. It turns out he used magic in his favor again. She had a strange feeling at first, but the desire to play with her new friend won out. She didn't care what he was like, who he was, or where he came from. Instead of finding out something about him, the girl starts answering his questions. She doesn't hesitate to tell everything she knows, and not only about herself. She doesn't realize what a serious mistake this could be, because if her mom were around, she's afraid she wouldn't let it be told, especially about other people, because it's unknown what this person's mission is and what they're doing here. He may have come to hurt or get revenge on someone, or maybe even several people because of her age. She doesn't realize this and may accidentally ruin someone's life. At some point, he suddenly starts inviting her and her mom to some party, or rather event, really wondering what it's for and how their presence can help him out. The girl admitted that most likely this is impossible because her mother will immediately refuse and will not go to an unknown event, given the fact that it was invited by a person whom she has never seen and does not know what awaits them there. But the wizard decided not to give up. He began to persuade her and said that in this case, you can deceive mom a little and say that it will be some kind of exhibition of animals, and all the inhabitants of the kingdom are invited there. Since her mom is very fond of animals, it is likely that he will agree. Only here, the girl did not even think how he could know this information, and that most likely he has prepared in advance, and his every word is pre-planned in advance. The child thought that mom definitely doesn't allow it and won't want to go anywhere. She started crying and the guy got scared and tried to calm her down. He didn't expect such a reaction and is afraid that Elvina will hear everything. That's what happened. Just a few seconds later, the girl's mom was already there. She came to find out what happened and thought it was all this man's fault. She didn't realize who he was, and somewhere the cat she let her daughter play with. The mom thought that the girl had fallen, and the man just came up because he heard the scream and decided to help. So far, everything is calm, although it looked like there was going to be some conflict. As long as the girl hasn't said anything, the mom is calm. It all depends on how the child explains the situation. As soon as the girl started asking a lot of questions, the girl got even more scared and didn't want to say anything. She cries and wants to go home as soon as possible. Mom doesn't understand anything, so decided to take her daughter home, have a quiet dinner, and of course, say goodbye to this person. She knows that if her daughter is already in a bad mood, it's useless to do anything about it. The only thing she can do in this situation is to feed her a delicious cake, drink tea, and create a calm atmosphere, so that she has no reason to be nervous, let alone afraid of anything. Started apologizing, even though it's not really her fault. The main thing for her is to calm the child down and not to ruin the relationship with her. Since the first method did not help, the girl came up with something else. She promised that tomorrow they would go on a little shopping to buy her a dress and beautiful shoes, of course. The girl immediately agreed and even forgot what she was offended and what she did not like. She said she has the best mom who is better than any other friend or girlfriend. She loves spending time with her, especially if it's some unusual outing. Elvina calmed down and was once again convinced that she knew how to calm her child. All she had to do was promise that they would go out together. In fact, she knows very well that she doesn't care about all those dresses and shopping as much as the time spent together. Even if they don't find the dress, the girl will still be happy and say it was the best day ever. Since they rarely get to be together lately because of work and other things, they start to think that they are very lonely, and so they get acquainted with it and agree to go out with strangers. And to make her happy, my mom offered to treat her to more than just pie. It really does help a lot. Meanwhile, it's very strange that the man doesn't go anywhere and keeps standing in the same place. It's as if he wants to do or say something else and is waiting for the right moment. The girl thought he was just in no hurry and wanted to make sure the baby was okay. She stopped paying attention to him and hugged her daughter. Meanwhile, the next day has come. Alex, as usual, is very busy and can't stop thinking about Elvina. He keeps imagining a happy family and thinks that it's impossible. He has no doubt that the girl has fallen out of love with him, because if she still had feelings, she would never behave like that. He even keeps a personal diary and writes all his experiences in it, as well as drawing and reminiscing about the times when they loved each other so much that they didn't realize they could be apart. When he left, he was sure that when he came back, they would love each other more. They would create a real family. They would have a child. And that was all he dreamed of. But in the end, it didn't turn out that way. Alex genuinely doesn't understand where and when he made a mistake. And the worst part is that he can't ask about it. And if he did, she would never tell him anything. Because of these problems, he can no longer fully concentrate on his work. For example, right now, he's got so much paperwork that it's going to take at least a few weeks to get through. But because of all this, he can't get down to business. In the meantime, his assistant came to him. He said that unfortunately he couldn't cope with the case he assigned to him. He's very ashamed, and to remedy the situation, the guy asks to give him another case to prove that he can cope with something. Alex answered that he didn't have time for that, and if he wanted to find something else to do, he could ask someone else to do it. And he also said that he didn't even think of punishing him for that, because everyone had situations when something didn't work out, and that was normal. The assistant did not expect to hear these words. He calmed down and thanked, because when he came here, he was sure that he would only be punished, and maybe even lose his job. They had agreed that the next time Alex gave him an assignment, he would have to do it, and much sooner than necessary. It's the only way the assistant will stop feeling unworthy of the place. Even though they had a calm conversation, he still had even more motivation to prove he was one of the best. It was evening. Alex usually rarely goes out, but today something happened, and he suddenly wanted to go for a walk. He didn't even have time to go into the garden when he saw Elvina and some strange guy next to her. He came closer to find out what was going on. He'd been thinking all day about how to get this relationship back, and she was out with another guy. And at a time when he couldn't see, he was very indignant. He'd never expected her to do something like this. He only gave them one shot to tell the truth. Otherwise, one of them would really regret hiding the relationship from him, assuming, of course, he got it right. Elvina looks at him and doesn't even know how to react to this. She doesn't know what to say, though it's better to calm him down now. If Alex hears something he doesn't like, he could hurt someone. The guy isn't going to stick around long and wants to understand everything right now. He gave them a few minutes and warned them that was the maximum he could wait for an answer. The guy, who was walking with her, tried to explain that Alex had misunderstood everything. Elvina asked him to step aside because she thought that she should speak now. She said she was sorry about the situation, but whether she'd cheat on him now or not, only she knows. I wonder why she went out with that doctor and whether it was anything like a date. At least from the outside, it looks that way. Once Alex put the sword away and gave them some more time, they managed to calm down, but not for long, because there was no telling if he would pull it out again. The question arises why they are scared. If it was not a date, there can be only two options. Either the girl fell in love with this man and did not want Alex to know about it, or she just suggested him to talk about her problems, not in the hospital, but walking in the garden. It's weird that just now she wanted to calm him down and felt guilty, and now she's outraged and making him feel guilty by asking him what he's doing here, as if he has no right to be walking around at this time and place. It's not very right of her. If it wasn't a date, it could have been explained right away that he misunderstood and there was nothing wrong with it. She made it worse as usual. Elvina is very lucky that he still loves her, because if he didn't, he wouldn't have been prevented from doing what he thought he was doing in the first place. Surprisingly, Alex is not nervous, just asking questions and waiting for answers. The doctor thought there was going to be a conflict and decided to defend his patient, even though it wasn't necessary. He asked that Alex not get too close and explained that they didn't feel safe that way. In fact, he was doing the absolute right thing on his part. He just didn't know what things really looked like or what had happened between them. Since the girl has yet to tell him the truth and ask for advice, he has no idea that they're better off out of the way now. Alex replied that he agrees to leave them alone, but all he wants is to know the truth, whether they are in a relationship and why the girl is still silent, as if she is trying to hide something and doesn't want to tell something. The doctor answered in her place and explained that they had just had a serious conversation, and therefore, she didn't have the energy to explain anything right now. He convinced me that there was nothing between them and asked me to reschedule this conversation for another time. After that, they just walked off in the other direction and said goodbye. In fact, despite this conversation, the guy realized everything for himself. He was convinced that the girl does not want to see him and know him. He will have to forget about this relationship, no matter how much he would like to return everything that was between them. He doesn't even want to go anywhere. He wants to stand in the same place, look at the sky, and feel like he's in the past for a second, but not in reality. A little over half an hour has passed, and the doctor has already escorted the girl home. He wonders how she is feeling and whether this meeting has spoiled her mood. She replied that everything was fine, and it wasn't really his fault. She explained that she knew the guy and wanted to forget everything that had happened between them. That was the reason why she had to go to him for help. The doctor was very much surprised, for they had not been able to accomplish this for several days, and now she confessed herself and told the truth at the most unexpected moment. He doesn't even know what to do in such a case. Usually he needs a little time, because it's hard to know what to do in such a situation right away. In fact, Elvina has been confused for a long time and doesn't know if she has any feelings. On the one hand, she is happy to remember the past, but on the other hand, it's as if something is preventing her from being and feeling comfortable with this person. As suddenly, the doctor did not hold back and touched her face. He must have been frightened by the competition, and thus he had to confess his feelings. After a second, he immediately regretted it and apologized. He doesn't understand what it was. It's like the doctor was out of control and didn't know he could even do it. He's very scared to hear and see her reaction, for she may have regarded him as a doctor and a man to whom she could turn for help, but no more. He immediately started to say that it wasn't what she was thinking, but the girl understood everything. She didn't know how to react to it herself. She froze in one place and realized that another problem had arisen. She hadn't sorted out her feelings for one man as another one had appeared, one for whom it was unclear whether to reciprocate or not. She never even once saw him as someone to create a relationship with. Before that, it seemed like it couldn't get any more complicated than that, but it ended up being even more complicated than it was before that. She looks at him and doesn't know if she should be outraged now or just go home in silence. She wants to take the time back to think it over carefully and not agree to this outing. On the one hand, she's tempted to say it's okay and do the same in return, but at that moment, she has Alex in her mind. It's also unclear if she still has feelings for him and wants to go back to him, because at least they have a child who needs a family. To avoid creating an awkward situation and making more mistakes, they had to say goodbye and arrange to meet in the office. Elvina couldn't even say any parting words. First of all, she really wants to sort herself out and figure out what she wants to do. A girl is very afraid to put an end to a relationship, and even more so, to refuse one of them, and all because it will be very difficult to change her mind and apologize to the guy whom she will still choose.